well, the kind of thing that started us thinking about Darwin was, the very well-known, cliche by now, we'll give you the cartoon size version here, of, how the genotype and the phenotype relate to each other. And of course, it wasn't his vocabulary, but it was pretty much chiefly used over the century afterward. And we don't really care what it's called right now, but the bottom line was that there was something going on, according to Mr. Darwin, and it had been going on for a long, long time, and it was a time during which he was not privileged to be an observer, eons and eons, yet he was positioned in the moment to be doing something, which let's call it for now observing. And he ended up putting together a way of speaking about this, which didn't at the time have available to it, the concepts of genes, or the genotype, or certain DNA and all that. But it was something that he left room for to be occurring within an individual organism and during an individual organism's lifetime. Yet, he did not, and I'm sure he was forced by circumstance, pretend to be able to comment in detail or give us a picture in any way of what happened inside that organism during its brief lifetime over evolutionary time. So he couldn't comment on that, but he had to leave room for it to occur and to be able to speak about it nonetheless. That's really remarkable. And what he did was he spoke about it on another level, which was restricted to the level of his observation over many, many, many generations of lifetimes and many, many, many organisms in a given species, and of course, many species. And I hope you forgive us soon when we get rid of the notion of species too, but for now we'll use it as well. So what he did was he gave us a way of speaking so that we didn't force ourselves into believing or misguiding ourselves into thinking that we had to give causal, detailed sequences of events as if we were perhaps a historian watching the American Revolution and traveling along with the people fighting the wars and giving play-by-play and blow-by-blow comments of what happened and descriptions. That was not at all what Charles Darwin did. In fact, what he did was he really found a way of talking about time very different from the way history talks about time. Completely different, if you think about it. I mean, he makes no effort to give you play-by-play, step by step, to construct a narrative over a trajectory in space or time. But he realizes that he is limited in the present moment in which he is doing what we call observing, and yet he gives us a way of sensibly talking about all the stuff that happened. Now that's the beginning of it, and there's a lot more. But the point of it here is that there's an interesting aspect to the way this talk goes, because it relates what happens on these levels, let's say, and it's generalized even further down with the Neo-Darwinian synthesis. What happens in the short life of an individual creature somehow can be spoken about in terms that affect another science, another level of observation, another frame of reference. The vast state of affairs on the planet Earth, with all the species and all the populations, unfolding over millennia. So here we have it, a creature, a moment, a flicker, a single place. And yet, he's managed to give us a way of speaking about how that works with regard to the much broader perspective. And of course, as we know, we've gotten so far further down inside that creature with the DNA and the various chemistry involved that that's another level that is open to interaction with the broadest level of scope of events on our planet, but not directly. There have to be these loops whereby what happens on one level affects what happens on another level, at least the way we speak about it. We don't pretend to know exactly what's going on, and there's good reason for that. So, for example, this has been in more recent, discussions in evolution theory, been broken down into distinctions between so-called replicators and interactors. I mean, it's a terrible, crude way of speaking, but it makes a point that Dawkins has made with this for the past couple of decades. But what happens is that interactions on the levels of populations in vastly extensive in time and space is influenced by what happens within individual organisms in individual lifetimes. And conversely, what happens in that interaction of populations and events on an entirely different scale, frame of reference, can be spoken of as due to what Darwin calls simply natural selection, and retroactively be seen to be influencing in turn on the more, what we would otherwise call fine-grained or microscopic level, or any level, a different frame of reference, so limited in time and space, events that happen within the individual organism and then even further down within the genome. So you have this really interesting loop going on, and it's far more interesting than this, we believe, where we are able to speak about things without saying stupid stuff, really without lapsing into nonsense or paradox. And that's an incredible gift that we haven't yet used when we have to speak about human events within the boundaries of the eyes and ears, what's going on in the mind, what's going on in the brain. And we find ourselves pretending to be privy to observations of narratives that are way beyond our reach and not necessarily at this time. But if we manage to speak on the level on which we are capable of, with all due modesty and knowing that we're outside the brain and even with